Hello and welcome to our last official Survivor Hamilton Old Meets New video. It's been over 3 months. 30 people have been whittled all the way down to 2. And today, our final 2, April and Graham, are going to earn the right to ask the jury to vote for them to be the winner named Sole Survivor. It's been a very exciting journey, and I'm sure we're going to get into a lot of what happened along the way from the point of view of April and Graham. A lot of you have played with them. A lot of you didn't really get to play closely with either of them, so this is going to be the chance to learn about the games they played and to ask your questions. So for everybody, the way that we're going to do it is we're going to have Graham and April each talk for a few minutes about their own game and why they think that they deserve to be named the winner. And then after that, you guys are going to have the chance to ask questions. Would like to keep it to 1 question per person and try to do a good job of sharing your time with each other. But you can ask a question of either April or Graham or both of them if it's a quick question. And after that, so once your questions are all asked, they'll each get a final word, and then I'm going to ask you guys to send me your votes just via WhatsApp as per usual. And then I will be revealing the winner tomorrow at the party, and I'll also stream that live, record that video so I can get that posted as well. Is that clear to everybody? Does anybody have any questions about the process, serious questions about the process before we get to April and Graham?
No.
Okay. So without further ado, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass it to April. And April, so you've come a long way since the 7 tribal councils in a row on, or 6 in a row at least, on Navala. You made it all the way to the finals. Tell us a little bit about your journey and why the jury should name you the winner.
I totally thought you were going to make Graham go first.
You're going to get the last word too, April.
I do? Okay. So that's good. Yeah, I think so. I'm going to talk a little bit about my strategy because I watched some of the videos that came out on Game Over the last couple of days, and it sounds like there's a lot of questions about how I played and if I was just kind of riding people's coattails or if I was actually involved in some of the decision making. So initially coming into the game, I didn't really have a ton of relationships other than the family. I tried to make some headway with other players, but I kind of got pigeonholed into the family alliance. And, I made some pretty good connections, but I realized right away that there was no way I was going to be able to get out of that family alliance because I was already stuck in there. Nobody was really going to trust me. And, coming into the game, not knowing a ton of people, I realized I'm not going to be able to come in and make a ton of big moves right away. I'm going to have to get a lay of the land and learn how I can work with people. Is he shushing me?
No, sorry. I'd prefer if people are sending chat and messages right now, but that's probably going to be distracting for April. So if you don't mind, I know it's annoying, but just no, I'm the one who interrupted April, so I apologize. But
I totally thought you were shushing me. That's funny. Yeah, so I knew I wouldn't be able to make any big moves and come out as that big player, not knowing people, because nobody really knows how to take me in the game. I don't have the same kind of relationships that Graham does, and I haven't played before. So there was a bit of a learning curve there. So coming into it, I played a little bit of like the influencer strategy, working behind the scenes and positioning myself with players that I thought were strong in the game, whether it be strategy-wise or with the challenges, and not really play like a big flashy game. I wanted to plant the seeds kind of behind the scenes and work with people to make the moves happen that I thought should be happening, and really only push things if I felt that my own position in the game was in danger. Are you laughing at me?
No. Sorry.
Get off your phone. Yeah, and the other thing I really wanted to do is avoid putting a target on my back, which was a bit hard working with Jim and Ian initially. So the ways that I did that was I held back in challenges a little bit. I've watched Survivor before, and I realized that like a lot of the players, like I think Kyle and Brian experienced this because they were pretty good at the challenges. Once you get closer to merge, you become a target right away with people. So I wanted to avoid that happening to me. So I did lay back in the challenges a little bit early in the game. I didn't necessarily throw challenges or try to throw the wrong answers out, but I didn't want to come in first place all the time. So I tried to stay in like the bottom end of the pack. It kind of screwed me over a little bit in the rankings because I did botch a few challenges early in the game. And overall, just kind of playing like a little bit more of a laid back game and relying on those dominant players to play the social end of the game for me. And then the other thing I think came into play for my game was timing and just making the right decisions at the right time. And obviously, like later in the game, winning challenges at the right time. I don't want to like talk super long, but I know a lot of people wanted to know a little bit about some of the things that I did in the game to get this far. So kind of going through Navala, I think one of the biggest moves in my game that I can't take full credit for was getting Wayne out of the game. That kind of changed the whole Navala tribe. He was playing a little bit in the middle, and Ruth and I were planting some of the seeds with Jim and Ian, and we weren't necessarily working together on that vote. I think Ruth has a little bit of a different perspective on it probably than I do, but we were trying to get Wayne out, playing in the middle, and we made that last minute switch to get him out of the game. Damien, I almost got voted out. Actually, when Damien got voted out, I had the idol. And I think one of the first times I put my foot down was with Jim and Ian, just saying like, Jim wanted to tell everybody that I had the idol just to win Andre and Shareed back and Dave after that initial Wayne vote. And I put my foot down and I said, you know, I think that they're actually going to turn on us in the next vote. And I kept the idol hidden. I mean, I think they kind of knew that it was with us because we were all on the phone at the same time when the reward challenge came out. But I think with the Damien vote, for the most part, I avoided that one just based on my layback strategy. Nobody saw me as a threat in that vote. Otherwise, I think I would have been out of the game because I took, how many votes did I take, Mike? Do you remember?
On the
Damien vote.
You guys each had 4, I think.
Mm-hmm. They did like a tie vote there. And then I didn't play my idol, so I was like sitting on my idol, shitting my pants because I thought I was going to be out of the game at that point. But I think, you know, at that point I was playing that laid back game and nobody saw me as a threat, so they decided to go with Damien because he had ruffled a few feathers. And then on the Jim vote, Ian and I knew at that point in the game that we were in trouble. Because everybody was trying to vote the Hamiltons out. Our alliance became a huge target in the game. And there's a little bit of like a wrong narrative out there about that vote, that Jim kind of sacrificed himself. And he did at the end of the day. But the story behind that one is we were trying to save the idol, obviously. And what happened was Jim was going to be out of the game either way. And Ian came to me before the vote and Jim was rallying like right before the vote happened, trying to save himself. And he wanted to tell Andre, who had the idol, to kind of gain trust and get him on our side. And he was talking to a bunch of different players in the game, just trying to rally and save himself. But we knew he was going to be out either way. So Ian actually came up with the plan to have both of us flip our votes onto Jim and save the idol. And it was kind of, you know, we knew that at the end of the day, they were going to keep voting the Hamiltons out, but it was a little bit more of like an FU to the other side because we were a little bit 2 steps ahead of them and knew it was going to happen and were able to keep that idol because they were trying to flush it out so hard. And then on Ulu, it was just kind of, for me, I think Graham and I talked about coming together eventually in the game. But at Tribe Swap, we knew that wasn't really going to happen. I didn't have my alliances anymore, so I came onto this new tribe not really knowing anybody except for the people I had played with before. So I got swapped onto a tribe with 3 strangers and 3 people who had been working against me for the entire game at that point. And I was kind of in the middle position where, you know, Sharid and Sasha and Ruth knew they needed that extra vote to survive. And they were kind of trying to pull me back into their alliance and work with them because we were all the newbies and, you know, we could team up together. But it was the same thing with the Kabara people. So I was getting that little bit of push-pull in the middle. And I decided again at that point to align myself with the players that I thought were a little more stronger in the game, a little more strategic, going to be good at the challenges at the end of the game and build those relationships. And it was kind of a clean slate for me because I didn't have any bad blood with them. And we pretty much coasted through that tribe, I would say, because we did win quite a few challenges. And then there was an opportunity there to just vote out a couple of my rivals from earlier in the game. And then the merge happened and Graham got voted out of the game. So at that point, I would say there was like a little bit of relief for me because I was worried about getting pigeonholed back into the family alliance again. So me, Graham, and Jordan getting pulled back together. But I was also a little bit sad for Graham because he was super into the game and it would have been nice to work with him. So I just used that time like post-merge to keep connecting with Brian. But I think right after Graham got voted out, Kyle called Graham to kind of apologize because he felt super bad about voting him out and lying to him and everything. And we had this conversation about, you know what, why don't you, now that you're kind of in this position of Brian's been working with other people prior to this, I don't think that, I didn't trust the strength in my relationship with Brian at that point to get me through to the end of the game. So I knew I needed somebody else that I could work with. And I think Kyle was kind of in the same position too. Like he had gotten himself to the point where he was under a lot of pressure and a big target in the game. And he also needed another person to work with and have a vote on his side. So him and Graham connected us together. We connected together and we started working together at that point. So, and I think Brian was already working with Kyle. So it kind of worked out perfectly to have that threesome working together. And then Graham re-entered the game. I think it was after one vote. And everything changed after that because, again, there was this little bit of push-pull. And I told Graham kind of immediately, like, go work with Jordan. I don't want to be associated with the family anymore. I've got these relationships that I've already built on the other side. But I kind of realized at that point, I was in a pretty good position to play between 2 strong pairs in the game. And I don't think that's something that a lot of people noticed. I think it was just assumed that I was working with Brian and Kyle exclusively, but there was also that Graham and Jordan connection. So at that point, I more or less had 4 people who weren't going to vote for me. And, Graham and Jordan were already working with the bastard side of the group. So there was that connection and protection for me in that part of the game. So I feel like I put myself in a pretty good position there, but also keeping myself aligned with Kyle and Brian, who were super loyal to me. And I think I knew at that point we had a lot of rewards sitting in our camp that could really help us all get to the end of the game. And then I can't remember when this happened, but at some point, John and I, we made a little side deal. John was on the Bastards. I was viewed to be on the other side in the other alliance, which I was. And we made this little deal with each other that if our names kind of came up as a target, we would shove it aside and put somebody else in the spotlight. So we never actually worked together on a vote, but for quite a while, we kept each other's names off the chopping block if we could. And eventually I kind of screwed that deal up because I voted for John. It wasn't that long ago. And then we lost trust after that. And I think it was after John voted for Sharon because he made a very similar deal with her that I I didn't trust it at that point. So it was like, yeah, you know what, if I have to go one way or the other, I'm not going to break the trust with my alliance with Kyle and Brian to keep John in the game. And then it was kind of at the point where I knew that if I got to the end of the game, people were going to be asking me, like, what was your big move? Like, what was your big play? Because that's what everybody's talking about. But I was in a position where I think at that point I had, Graham wasn't going to vote for me. Jordan wouldn't vote me out. Kyle and Brian wouldn't vote me out. John wasn't going to vote me out. And Chris had also said at one point he wouldn't vote me out. So I had 6 people in the game telling me that they're never going to vote for me. And it's like, you know what? I don't really need to make any big moves. Like, I can let the other players take the heat for all the big moves that are happening in the game. And I can just kind of sit here in the middle between these 2 really strong pairs of people and not really coast my way through, because I was involved in the strategy and the talks and the voting and what went on, but to basically keep myself protected. And that was one of my goals at the beginning of the game. And then at one point, when the votes started not really going in the direction we wanted to, I brought Graham back into the game, and back into our alliance. And I know that there was a lot of questions about that. I can't remember what vote it was after. There was like the Sharon vote, and then what was the next one?
It was right before Paul.
Right before Paul? So it was right before we voted out Paul. I just kind of realized that Graham was leaning a little bit too much on the other side, and he was pulling intel for me and taking it back to the bastards, and that was really screwing up our voting. And what our plans were. Our plans kept getting blown up by that. And I know a lot of people think that I pulled like the wife card and made his life miserable and told him to come back and work with me, but that wasn't the case at all. I just basically told Graham, like, okay, like, if you're going to work with them, you're cut off, and we're just not working together anymore. And Graham was in a position where he was also getting protection from my side of the game, or my side of the alliance. So I think he knew at that point that he wasn't going to be protected anymore. And he decided to, wrap it up. Why? You want to go?
No.
Graham's telling me to wrap it up. Yeah, so I know I've been more than like 5 minutes here.
20
minutes, okay. So yeah, the other thing too I wanted to talk a little bit about was just the Chris Pittman vote. That was something that it was a plan I took to Brian, and we just kind of worked it out. We knew we still had all these rewards left, and you like really threw me off with that.
I'm sorry.
And we all just kind of worked together and had to throw everything at Chris to get him out of the game. And I had seen Chris as like a very unpredictable player all throughout the game. I know we tried to work together, but it just kind of seemed like on the other side of the alliance, Chris was the one strategizing and making the plans. And I always had this question mark of, why aren't we talking about like voting Chris out? So eventually we got it done. And then, yeah, I guess just to wrap it up for Graham's sake, the challenge format was announced. And at that point, I'd been laying back in the challenges earlier on in the game. And I just decided, it's time to turn on the competition mode. I was a little bit worried that I was going to shit the bed on all of them. But, I prepared, I got a spreadsheet together, and I was just ready, and I won my way to the final 2. So here we are.
Awesome. So that was a very comprehensive initial argument from April for sure, and I gotta say too that I did make a point to April and Graham to do a good job of listing the moves that they made, and that's clearly what April's done initially. So that may have answered some of the questions that you guys are gonna have. So we're gonna throw it to Graham now to do the same thing, talk a little bit about his moves, and then we will go to anybody who wants to ask a question of them immediately after Graham's done. All right, thank you.
All right, so I'm not going to get into the specifics like April did. My speech is going to be kind of short, sweet, to the point. If you have any questions about the specifics, You can ask me in the Q&A, and I'll just read my speech because I'm terrible at talking on the fly. And here we go. I'll start it off with, yeah. I'm going to start it off with John's claim that I played a perfect game since coming back into the game. And I can't say whether that's true or not because perfect is pretty subjective, but here's what I can say. My strategy was to use my social game to carefully coordinate back and forth style elimination until it was no longer safe to do so. And then at that point, I'd rely on my ride or dies to make sure there'd be enough votes in my favor to keep me around until the end. So here's my argument. If by perfect, we mean executing a strategy according to plan, then perhaps, yes, I played a pretty perfect game post-merge. But realistically, I'm sure a bunch of you would disagree with that, and perhaps rightfully so, because we all know my game wasn't without fault. So let's break down my game into 3 sections. First, the confidence building period. In OG Kobara, I had a consistent top 5 finish contributing to Kobara's near shutout. In fact, I finished out the first half of the entire game with a 5th place finish. Second, the Hellfire period. This is my shuffle into the chaotic Kobara 2.0 from the smooth sailing I had on Navala 2.0. And then after a number of lost challenges, it's arguable that I was the accidental victim of a thrown challenge on Cowan. However, while on Exile, I was voted back into the game, which is something that nobody else in Survivor Hamilton can claim. And then finally, the tournament period. And as John said, I was on the right side of every elimination post-merge except for the Chris vote. In fact, I successfully worked the middle with Jordan and Paul for weeks while strategizing closely with Chris using insider information that I gained from April after, by the way, I put her and Kyle together while I was on Exile Island. I thought it would be an unexpected pairing after Kyle voted me out, which turned out to be a very smart play since April's now made it to the finals. And so in closing, aside from that one small elimination hiccup, which I feel I more than made up for by getting voted back into Survivor Hamilton, my game went almost entirely according to plan. And that's why I feel I deserve to be this season of Survivor Hamilton's sole survivor.
Thank you, Graham. So we got 2 very different styles from our 2 finalists. One written down and rehearsed, and one very candid and a little bit long-winded. I think you guys would. That's what some of the messages were saying. So what I'm going to do now is anybody who wants to speak up and ask a question can do it, but just try to be organized in how you do it and not speak over each other, and just give one person. You'll give you the floor to ask your question, and then be respectful and pass it to them to answer. There won't be any back and forth between the jury and the contestants. So does anybody want to ask a question first?
I got a question for April.
Shoot. Go ahead, James.
Yeah. You have to be completely honest. Did you ever send Graham to the doghouse for not voting with you?
Nope. Never.
Never. Okay.
All right.
Do you have any follow-ups to that?
Well, there's not really any back and forth, but it was a closed-ended question. If you in the future, if anybody wants to get more information, you can ask, and you can frame your question a little bit differently. But you got a no from April on that one.
James, did you mean like a literal doghouse, or did you want to expand on that?
Can I expand on that, or?
Like, we got time.
Okay. No, just not a literal doghouse, but send them away, or kick them off the bed for a night or 2, or I don't know. I think it's not just me. I think a lot of people are wondering if you've ever done anything in real life because something happened in the game that you weren't happy about with Graham.
No, and I think I talked about that earlier when I was speaking before, that there was that narrative out there that, Graham and I had a dispute at home after a vote, and it caused, disruption outside of the game in our relationship. And that wasn't the case at all. Like it's really hard when you're married and you're living together and playing a game together, especially when you're as competitive as I am. And I'm actually a bit more competitive than Graham. But the day that Graham decided not to work with the Bastards anymore, there was a few things going on with me at work, and just a couple other things in my personal life that I was in a seriously shit mood already that day. And then, the vote didn't go my way and I was surprised. And, I tried to treat everything between our relationship in the game as gameplay. Like we play a lot of games together and I am pretty cutthroat in games. And I think Mike knows that too when he's played games with me before. Like I don't put up with any shit as a competitor. And I treated Graham just as I would anybody else I'm playing with in the game. If you're backstabbing me in the game, like you're off my team. Sorry. And that's what I did.
Yeah, to be clear, she never once demanded that I change up my gameplay and work with her. She didn't even really ask me to do that. When I made the decision, it was something that I made for myself. It was the right time to do it, obviously. I mean, whether it was controversial or not, it certainly got Paul out, which really sucked, and that made me feel really crappy. But I mean, now both of us are in the final two, so obviously it was the right decision for us, even if it screwed a lot of other people over.
Awesome. Thank you both. Kyle, do you have a question?
Yeah. I want you to tell me why the person next to you shouldn't win.
You want to go first?
You go first.
I think the biggest thing that I have that April doesn't, at least outwardly have, is the social game. She played with her group of people and she played with them well. Obviously, she's made it to the end, so she made a lot of right decisions for herself. But my gameplay was about playing with everybody, and I don't know. For me personally, I think that's a way more exciting way to play, and I think that the visibility of that is more fun to watch also. So for that sake, or for that reason alone, I'd say I'm more deserving of it. But I mean, she'll probably disagree, and I'm sure a lot of you will.
Mm-hmm. I think for me, I've survived way more tribals. I've survived more votes. I've made the right plays at the right time, aligned myself with the right people at the right times. I haven't been voted out of the game before. And I'm also new to the game. So this is like my first run at it. I've never done this before. I didn't know what to expect. And, I also didn't have the relationships already from playing the game before, just, from my past life. Like I came into this with very few connections.
Follow-up question. Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I was gonna say maybe I'm being nitpicky, but the question is, tell me why the person next to you shouldn't win, not tell me why you should win.
So I think that was for April, just to talk a little bit more why Graham. I think you were trying to say describe what parts of your game Graham didn't have, but can you be a little bit phrase it?
Like specifically pick apart his game.
Bit, yeah.
We told each other we wouldn't do that.
You didn't tell me that, so.
Yeah, so I think like for the first half of his game, I was kind of watching along. Well, you guys only had one vote, I think, in Kabar, but I should say right up until he got voted out, there was a lot of things or advice that I gave him that he didn't take. Like I knew Chelsea was going to turn on Graham. And I think before even the first vote with Silas, after watching the videos, I said to Graham, I'm like, I don't think she's working with you. Like there's just something off to me. And it was just a gut feeling. And I continued that throughout, like even after when the Silas vote happened, I said, you should try to get a group of people together and vote her out of the game. I think she's going to screw you over. I just have that feeling. I obviously didn't know Chelsea and I didn't know that Kyle and Chelsea were working together, but I just had a weird feeling about it, just based on some of the the conversations that were getting back to me from Graham and things I had seen on the video. So I think all through that, I know I'm long-winded, right? Yeah, I saw those things coming and he didn't. And eventually it got him voted out of the game. And even Kyle, when you switched over and chose Kabara, like I was skeptical of that. And Graham didn't really see it. He thought you were just trying to separate yourself from the Bastards. And there's just things that he didn't see coming. And I think his intuition wasn't that great and it got him into trouble. And then I think post-merge, I'd say he just made too many deals with people, but I mean, he's still here beside me, so I can't fault him post-merge. I think he learned from his mistakes at the beginning of the game, but he also really botched the challenges at the end, right? So
I think
Thanks,
that's a good
April.
answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle. Peter, you got a question?
My question was going to be what Kyle clarified too. So I'll reconvene later.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I would say my question is in 30 seconds or less. Tell me why I should vote for you based on your biggest strategic move of the game.
Who's first?
I'll go. My strategic move, my biggest strategic move, wasn't one specific vote. I don't think I can narrow down my strategy into a single vote. My big strategic move was to work with the right people at the right time, and that's exactly what I did. I worked with you, Chris, from the very beginning until it was no longer the right decision for me to do so, and then I worked with Kyle and Brian in April. And that ended up bringing me to the end. So my strategy was purely social, and obviously it worked. So I think that's enough of a reason for you to vote for me.
April?
yeah, I think my biggest strategic move was working with players that were the more dominant personality types and stronger than me in the game, and we're going to have that spotlight put on them. But would also involve me in the strategy plays in the game and working out how we were going to make the moves. And that kept me sort of flying under the radar enough, but being able to have influence in the game.
Thank you. Who's got the next question? Nobody.
I think Paul had a question. He said in the comments.
I know, but then he left. His phone was dying.
I sort of have a question. It's not fully formed because I just sort of realized that we were doing this tonight. Can I go ahead with it?
Of course. Thanks, Ruth.
Yeah, so I was just sort of thinking, like, after hearing both of your strategies and stuff, I didn't hear much about what deal was sort of concocted between Brian and Graham to protect April. So if I could hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. I can give my perspective, and then April can give her side as well. But once the tribe swap was announced and I found out that April and Brian were on the same team together, the first thing I did was reach out to Brian and Dave and Paul to get them to work with, or to ask them if they would be willing to work with April. And they seemed pretty open to it because, I mean, having that extra number on a tribe, especially a tribe of 7, would be really, really convenient. It would bring their numbers from 3 to 4. So they were open to it, and obviously, as far as Brian and Cox are concerned, it lasted for a really long time, all the way until the end.
So, Graham, you're saying you coordinated that?
I'm saying I suggested to Brian and Paul and Dave that they be open to working with April, because they didn't really know April, only Paul did. So whether or not they would have had that interaction with each other anyways is another story. But I pulled out a husband card there and just asked for a little bit of help, and obviously they were open to it.
Thanks, Graham. I just want to confirm that.
Sure.
In April, I'm sure when you joined the tribe, you knew you had options. So what was your thought process like?
Initially my thought process was I'm screwed because I'm with 3 people that have been voting against me the whole game so far, and 3 people that I do not know. And what happened from my perspective was Graham said, I talked to Brian. He's a nice guy. I worked with him in the last game. And Brian and I started talking and, feeling each other out and decided to work together.
Awesome. Thanks. Does anyone else? Peter, you got a question?
Yeah, can you walk us through the deals that you guys had made with each other through the game and how you expected to leverage those, as the field dwindled?
Want me to go first?
Sure.
Yeah, honestly, we didn't really have any deals with each other. I think anything that we had or didn't have was kind of unspoken. Like even as I said earlier, like my decision to commit to the April, Kyle, Brian side wasn't even a deal. It was just me making that decision for my own game. I mean, obviously, April being my wife, or even if she wasn't my wife and just lived in the same household as me, that would come into play a little bit. But yeah, no real deals whatsoever. Until
Did we lose them, or is that me?
They're out to me.
I think we lost.
We lost them
You guys want me to take over?
because we're all here.
Okay, so listen, we're taking this over now.
Where's Mike?
This is our show now.
I'll be
I'll
Graham.
tell you guys why I should win Survivor.
So who are you guys voting for?
I'm gonna vote
So
for
far,
myself.
Graham's killing it. Graham's killing it so far.
They might still be able to hear us, though. April, blink twice and you can hear us. Nope. All right.
Ruth, it's been a long time. Are you
Oh,
going to
Mike's out as well. Mike's out as well.
Yeah.
Are they all in the same house right now?
All right, see you there.
Yeah, they're in the same house.
Yeah, they are. They're in the same house.
Oh, Graham has left. Graham left. He can't win. How's Mike going to let himself back in his own meeting?
Silas will be able to let him in, I think.
Is it still recording then?
Yeah.
Who's the host now?
Yeah,
Kyle,
it
take
says
over.
it's still
Yeah.
recording.
It's game over now.
It's not. Yeah, we're not. Thanks for tuning into another episode. Game over. I don't have any commercials or anything to bring to the table on. Chelsea's not here. It's gonna be a flub.
You don't have a commercial on the go? Funny
I
commercial?
have one actually. Maybe I should share. Actually, you know what? She might kill me if I share it. I don't know.
Oh no. Something to kill our
Graham's
time
back.
with.
Hi, Graham.
Oh, hey, everybody.
Hey, April.
We're up a little bit.
Is Mike with you guys?
Is down at my brother's.
Did Mike sit like right in between you guys?
You might have to.
They're resetting it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is recording. All right. So, April, do you want to answer the rest of that question? Deals?
Hey, no. Hey, you're not running this meeting. Can you answer the rest of that question, please?
I refuse to answer that question. No, like honestly, we didn't make any deals with each other. We talked early in the game, like, oh, how funny would it be if we both made it to the end? But that was kind of like a pipe dream. And after Graham got voted out, like I had kind of gone my own separate way, and I was feeling really comfortable with my individual game without the family. And especially without that target on my back. And when he got back into the game, I'm like, you're playing your own game, I'm playing my own game. If we can work together at some point, like that's great, but we're not going to be making any deals with each other. And yeah, he did try to, I guess he didn't really even try to make deals at the end of it. Ooh.
Okay. Are we still there? We got him still?
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah.
All right. Ruby.
Perfect. Graham, did you want to add anything on that? Yes, I am running this meeting now.
Did you miss the first part that I said about the deals?
Yeah, you were just like a statue.
Oh, great. Yeah, all I was saying was what April said. We didn't have any deals really whatsoever. The only potential deal we could have even had is bringing each other into the finals, but April didn't want to do that. So she wanted to do whatever was smartest for her, which was right, and I think that she ended up doing that. But yeah, no real deals.
Yeah, I think we talked about not voting for each other at some point, but
That was more unspoken.
yeah.
So Sandra has a question, and I'll ask it for her. She's listening in. For each of you, who was the hardest person to vote out, or what was the toughest vote for you? And why?
Paul for me, because I was working really closely with Paul and Jordan, and then at really like a last minute decision, I ended up sort of totally cutting out on the alliance that I had with them to work with April and Brian and Kyle, and I tried to get them both to come on board, and Jordan ended up doing so begrudgingly. But Paul didn't want to do it because he had made a commitment to the Bastards, which was, I mean, a nice thing for him to do. But unfortunately, I ended up getting him voted out, and I didn't want to do that, but I did, and I know it sucked. But I mean, I'm here at the end, so maybe it was the right decision, but it still sucked.
April?
Does John count as somebody that I voted out of the game?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Then I think for me, it was John because we worked, I shouldn't say we worked together, but we'd talked to each other since the beginning of the game, and we were kind of working or sharing information and chit-chatting the whole time the way through the game, and making fun of some of like the follies that Navala had early on with the challenges. So we had a really good camaraderie going. And I think we played a very similar game, and at the end of it, it was shitty having to choose between Graham and John.
She picked right.
Okay, does anybody else have a question?
Oh, no.
Yes, I do.
Just go on her phone again. Just leave it on the phone.
The second most common asked question in Survivor. Can you each tell me what you would do with $1 million? Real question.
Invest it.
Thank you.
That's all you do with $1 million?
I mean, invest it for like a year or two, but
An investment.
have some fun with it.
Graham?
Buy a house.
We have a house.
A different house. I don't know.
Wow.
Dude.
Yeah, we clearly haven't playing a game where the prize is $1 million.
No one wants to take me to Disneyland at all?
I don't know. Don't really have any worries right now that I need to use the money for. I just use it for fun, things that I like for fun.
Buy an awesome hoodie.
And it's not like we can go anywhere right now anyways.
All right. John, do you have a question? You went to the most tribals. You had tons with April.
It's true. I guess my question was in the tribal yesterday. It's for either of you, but you guys halfway through the final group, Graham was always answering first, and then April right behind, and then after April started answering quicker, Graham was like literally 5 seconds or 10 seconds behind. Was that on purpose? And if so, why? Wasn't on purpose?
No, none of our answer timing was on purpose at all. And it was kind of funny because some of the questions that I got the answers to, Graham answered first. There was a couple of immunities, I think, right early on when you got voted in, that I got the answer. And I think I'd said before, I'm a vocal person. I scream it out loud, and I always check my answers. He doesn't. So while I'm checking my answer, he just sends it in and wins. But no, there was no coordination of who was sending in answers when.
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks, guys. Sharon, what about you? Or see, Kyle may have another one. Kyle, you go first.
Wayne wanted me to ask the question from Game Over last night, but I won't ask that one. The question that I have is it's just something that Mike and I have talked about previously as well, and it factored a lot into the season in which I won the game. But how much would you say that luck has factored into you sitting where you are right now? Like, I know in these situations, a lot of times we like to talk about how our moves got us there and how we played the game, but how much has luck kind of put you in the place where you are right now?
For me, one time, and that was right after I played my idol and Mike announced the tribe swap. I knew at that point, like, there was nothing else I could do in the game to save myself. I was going to be the next person voted out, regardless of anything I tried to do. It was just pointless then. So for me, that was sheer luck. Mike announcing the swap the day after Ian got voted out.
Great answer.
For me, it was Elliot dropping out. That was the luckiest thing possible. And then I got an opportunity to get voted back in, which was pretty great and pretty fun. And obviously nobody else can say they did that, but I was really lucky to even have that opportunity to do that. So
Elliot could say that.
True. But without him dropping out, obviously I wouldn't be here.
Sharon, I know I put you on the spot before, but did he come up with a question?
I don't really. Oh, can you guys see me? Okay. I don't really have a question because I feel like a lot of the questions were asked and it was kind of answered. Yeah.
Cool. Well,
I have a
I know,
question.
not very exciting.
Meg, yeah, I was coming to you next.
I just want to know who you guys think was the main puppet master of the whole game.
Typical.
How do you pick one?
You have to.
Mike.
Yeah, I mean that's the true answer. But of the players,
But aside from yourselves, then who do you think played the most?
but you could say
strategic
yourself
game?
if you want.
Yeah, or yourself. Yeah, you're right.
The entire game? That's a good question. Pre-merge, certainly not me. I think post-merge an argument could be made that I was pretty pivotal in almost all of the votes, whether or not I was the one making the decision or just, somebody involved in it or somebody that was required to make it happen. But, overall, that's a good question. Chris seemed to have his fingers in all the pots.
Okay, not a very definitive answer. Thanks, Graham.
Well, there is no right answer, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's an answer to that.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions before we disconnect the video here and everybody sends me their votes and then we reveal them tomorrow?
I have one. Mine's sort of in the vein of Kyle's question, and it goes to both of you. I want you to tell me the biggest weakness of the other person and give a specific example. So like a one word, what's their biggest weakness, and then give a specific example of that.
So Graham's biggest weakness is he takes everybody at face value and he trusts people too easily. And him getting voted out of Kabara was an example of that, even though I tried my damnedest to get him to change his moves.
I think April is too rigid. Once she's made up her mind about something, or she's decided what she's going to do, she won't do anything else.
I'm stubborn.
That's another way to put it. There was an opportunity for Jordan, April, and I to work with John, Chris, and James. And in theory, the six of us could have got top six very, very easily. And April didn't want to do it. It would have been great. Who's to say if we both would have ended up in top two? But at the time, it seemed like a really, really smart or a good option. And she just wouldn't even entertain it.
And now we're here.
So I have one more follow-up question.
Thanks, Brian.
Your spreadsheet that you made, was it Excel or Sheets?
100% it was Excel.
And whose decision was that?
Mine.
Okay, so unless there's any last questions, looking at all of you. Peter?
I have a question for Brian. The question is, when are you going to let this go?
I'm just gonna beat the jokes to death until they're done.
It's
If
too
we
late.
ever play
Dead.
again, it's just gonna keep going.
Dead, Brian. It's gone. Okay.
A question for Mike. Mike, how many different people have you wanted to win over the course of this game?
How about, there's nobody I really wanted to win. The people that I thought would get to the furthest were John and Brian. And I think that was a pretty good thing. I did not think that anyone from the family would get to the end, especially how the game started. That's for sure.
Okay.
So I'm definitely surprised by this final two. So without further ado, Graham, what's kind of your final thoughts? What do you want the jury to remember before they cast their votes?
I'd like them to remember that I made a plan for myself. I stuck to it, and it worked. My plan after coming back in to Ten Duo was to play a social game, play the middle, have alternating votes go back and forth between majorities as you know, roughly as possible. And then when that didn't work, to stick with my my guaranteed votes. And you know, that's what I did, and it's ended up bringing me to the final two. So I did exactly what I wanted to do. Whether or not it's something that earns me the title of Sole Survivor is up to you guys. But I certainly think it's one hell of a game.
Thank you, Graham. April, what about you?
I think what I would want people to know is that even though I didn't appear to play like a flashy game, you know, on the videos and even, you know, being super social, I played pretty hard behind the scenes. And I think Graham was probably the only person who saw that. And I mean, I fought like hell through the first half of the game, which I mean, most of the people on the jury didn't see that either, or experience Navala with a target on my back. And I just kind of dug in and survived, like made it all the way through and aligned myself with the right people to do that. And it, you know, it maybe wasn't the most visual flashy game, but I did a lot of work behind the scenes to get here. And hopefully I answered everybody's questions about that in my 30-minute ramble.
Well, thanks a lot, April, Graham, the jury. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for an amazing season. This will really be the last video that, you know, so many people are on together. You know, we'll post something about the finale tomorrow. But I just want to say thank you all again for participation, for your enthusiasm. This was so much fun, and I'm really excited to see your votes start to roll in now, and I'll keep track of them, and I'll reveal the results tomorrow.
Thanks, Mike.
If nobody else is going to say it on behalf of everybody that played, Mike, thanks so much for all of the hours that you put into this. This is a lot of work, and you know, it's been a lot of fun, and I personally really appreciate everything that you put into this. So thanks for bringing us all together.
Thanks, Pete. Okay.
Good job, Mike.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks, everybody. Take care. See you tomorrow, I hope.
See ya.
Hey, Mike. Hey, guys.
Bye.